There is wealth in the Middle East. What there is not is development. Certainly not along the measures we'd expect with the kind of youth bulge working its way through the system right now. So my core coming together, my gap where connectivity is thin or absent in many instances. Since the Cold War, I can locate inside this blob all the wars, all the civil wars, all the ethnic cleansing, all the genocide, if you include the Balkans, all the mass rape as a tool of terror, all the children lured or forced into combat units, all the UN peacekeeping missions, all the U.S. nation-building missions. 6, unless you want to count Iraq as 3. Then we're up to 8. I've had various Army War College students do data drills on this and say, in effect, if you mush the boundaries just a little bit, you can fit about 97% of the terrorist activity in the world, too. All inside that blob. I get asked a lot in terms of influence for these kinds of ideas. How influential do you think these ideas are? How much impact are you having on people's thinking? My argument, my answer is always, it's not a matter of influence, it's a matter of accuracy. People are attracted to this picture of the world because they find it accurate. It's not my invention, it's simply the historical record and an observation. Typically, it gets presented like this by OSD. They like to call it the arc of instability. I have an entire section in the Pentagon's new map called Why I Hate the Arc of Instability. As a concept, as a phrase. Here's a version put out by the Canadians about 6 weeks ago. They're chairman of the Joint Chiefs, in effect. Okay? And again, you get this weird pink coloring I can't explain. But I just let it ride. So Canada came to the same conclusion. Why? When they mapped where they went across the 1990s, they got the same picture. The Australians will come up with the same picture, so will the Brits, so a lot of our countries that we consider allies. Give you a 3-pronged strategy coming out of this map. First, we work across the corridor to improve its ability to withstand and mitigate 9/11-like, this is the phrase we pulled out of the Y2K work I did years ago, system perturbations, a new definition of crisis, vertical shocks to very horizontally networked systems. I don't believe you can predict vertical shocks. I don't think you can prevent them 99 times out of 100. I do think you can model and get good at running down the horizontal scenarios or ripples that come out of that vertical shock. So can't stop Katrina, can deal better with New Orleans. So you got to preserve the core to grow the core. If you can buy an election in Spain with 10 backpack bombs, they're going to keep trying. So it's a question of improving our immune system response. And overwhelmingly, that's going to be a private sector function, which is taking off like wildfire now. And that's that concept of resiliency. Second, we got to discreetly firewall off the core from the gap's worst exports, pandemics, narcotics, terror. I like to tell the story. Walking through Hong Kong International Airport last August, saw a screen on the wall, saw people walking across that screen. As I walked down the hallway, I went like this. Guy on the screen went like that. So I went over and talked to the technician. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I just took your temperature." I said, "Really? I don't think I gave you permission. I'm an American." He said, "Not a problem. You're in Hong Kong." Okay? I got a temperature. I will win 48 hours, all expenses paid by me, vacation in Hong Kong, because it's against the law to travel out of that airport with a temperature. Now, why is that? SARS, avian flu. You're going to see that kind of technology replicated more and more. Third, most controversial concept. You've got to shrink the gap by exporting security to the worst situations there. And yes, making it better in terms of a global investment climate or a regional investment climate for multinationals to come in and quote-unquote exploit cheap labor. On average, paying 50% higher wages than the local economy in similar industries. I know a lot of people inside that gap who would love to be exploited. What we see typically is not too much globalization, but not enough. And when I say not enough, I mean not enough access to outside capital. because no one has grown their economy without access to outside capital. There is a myth that we built this country all by ourselves. But you go back and check the 1800s. The Europeans gave us money, 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 and exploited our cheap labor, just like we're doing with China right now, with their unfair advantage of cheap labor. And then I argue you're going to need two different forces to do this. You already got the one for regime change. That force I call the Leviathan, an unparalleled capacity to wage war. What we do not have is what I call the second half force, the one that does the peace waging, the nation building, the crisis response, the disaster relief, the counterinsurgency, everything right up to and including your occasional Fallujahs. That force I call the sysadmin force. People love this name, sounds sexy, historic. This one they say, I don't know, I don't want to work for a sissy force. Sounds like a bunch of geeks with pocket protectors. I say, relax, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the echo boomers. I'm talking to people about age 10 to 25. When you talk to them about networks and sysadmin, they get it. They get it all. They understand the complexity and the power of the notion. It's not geeks. It's how things get done. And if you're going to be a grand strategist, you're going to think about the future. You're not coming up with a grand strategy for this weekend or the next fiscal quarter or even, gosh, all the way through the QDR. You're coming up with something that's going to last for years and decades. And so you're going to talk to young people as much or more as people our age. Make an argument about structure following strategy. An explanation of that Leviathan sysadmin split, which I make purposely fairly strong, fairly stark. Because when I tell people it's a spectrum, then they say, you know what? I already got that covered. It's a lesser included. Got it covered. Don't buy for it. Don't train for it. Don't prioritize it. But I got it covered. We heard that explanation for years across the 1990s until we bumped into the reality called Iraq. People are admitting now, don't got it covered. Not even close. So you're seeing people like Mattis, Petraeus, and you're seeing the effort announced, I think it was New York Times today, about creating that school in Iraq. They're catching up to the echo boomers who've been doing this in chat rooms for the last 3 years. My argument for making it stark is you got to stop pretending the same force is going to do both packages. Wasn't the case historically. There's no reason to expect why it should be in the future. You could train a 19-year-old to do the stuff on the left side. On instinct, you can train him to do that.